Welcome everyone to another exciting ICPS webinar. My name is Kenny Coogan. I'm the Education Director for the ICPS. And today we're going to have an awesome tour of Carlton Carnivores, but his first name is Hawken, but sometimes I call him Carlton, but I remember his name is Hawken. And if anybody can attend the Vienna, Austria International Conference, which is May, I highly recommend it. My first conference was this past May in Japan. And just being around 120 people who have a passion for carnivorous plants was great. The conference was phenomenal. The presentations were great, but those meetings at lunch and dinner and at the bars were just really special because then you just get to talk shop. You just talk about carnivorous plants the entire time. So it's not just, 9 to 5 at the conference. It's all those extra at the hotel in the morning. You're just immersed in carnivorous plants. And it was really special. So in 2024, May, we're going to be in Vienna, Austria. Then we're taking off 2025. And then in 2026, we'll be in the Americas. So keep your planners, your agendas, your calendars open for those things.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hawken Carlton of Carlton Carnivores. I'm working on building up a little bit of a home business, growing the carnivorous plants here and selling them off to help support education and conservation initiatives, filming for posting on YouTube and other social media so that people can see all the different plants and animals that I work with and learn about why they're important. I'm out here starting this out in the garden right now. I will switch the camera so you guys can see what I'm looking at. It is very dry out right now because we have not had rain for like 3 months now. But out here is where I have all of the temperate carnivores, mostly the North American pitcher plants set up. This is kind of a new setup, and we're going to find out whether or not it really works over the winter here. I dug out the pools here, lined them with the pool liner, and all the plants are sitting in there. And as the winter comes in, I've set up the kind of a mini cold frame here with some greenhouse liner over it. I'm hoping that that'll keep things warm enough over the winter, because unfortunately here in Colorado, we get really, really cold sometimes in the winter. We've had records down to -30 before Fahrenheit. And these guys don't quite like that, so I'm hoping this will keep it just warm enough that they'll tolerate being out here. So this is the main pool over here. It's got all the plants that I'm growing in the personal collection, the things that I take and I'll divide from the mother plants, and then all the divisions I bring over to the second pool here. This will probably expand over the next year or two. So all the plants that are in these pots here are stuff that I actually have out for sale. Lots of different species and hybrids. We've got, he's not looking great right now, but that's Sarracenia flava maxima, the all green version of the yellow pitcher plant. There's a couple of white top hybrids that are back there. And I have to say, during summer at least, these guys are pretty easy to take care of because I can just stick the water filter hose in here and fill up the pool, leave it for a couple of days, and they do just fine even in the low humidity out here. But it's definitely going to be a challenge to see what happens this winter. So that's the first little section that I have. Anybody got questions about these guys, or do we want to move inside?
No questions yet. I'll let you know if people type questions into the chat box.
All right, then. So I'm going to head inside the main grow areas are.
Can you tell us what temperature it is today on October 25th?
I'd have to go check exactly what it was. I think right now it's sitting at about 63 degrees out here right now. It was supposed to get to like 75, but we had a morning full of nothing but fog. And of course, now there's not a cloud in the sky. It is just bluebird skies out here. But most of the stuff that I grow is indoors here, where it's a little bit warmer. I get to go hang out in the back corner with all the reptiles and the nice hot greenhouses. So we'll start with the smallest of the 3 little greenhouses that I've got here. And that is this one that I'm opening up right here. This is what I like to refer to as the Mediterranean greenhouse. It's the smallest one. I've got the perennial rainbow plants who are still working on recovering from recent repotting back here. There's a pure Bibulus lamellata right there. Gigantea is in the back. I've just resprouted some new Gigantea seeds back there. A couple of hybrids. The pygmy sundews are working on being resprouted from Gemme back there. But then the 2 shelves that are down below, this is where I've got all of the butterworts, the Mexican butterworts that I grow. So these guys, I've got this shelf here. We've got a couple of the Pinguicula gigantea forms back there. The one that's closest is the red flushed form. So in winter, that guy turns nice and kind of mottled red. And then the white flower is right behind it. And then working on repotting the ones down here still. So they're all in their old soil, but we've got a few different species. I just actually today repotted Pinguicula gypsicola and Gracilis back there. A couple other species yesterday. Got another Gigantea form way in the back corner here that I'm working on raising up. That's the all red version. So hopefully once it grows up, it'll just stay red all the time.
Hawken, for the red blush, when you say winter, what do you mean? Because you're growing it inside less light, less amount of time?
Since these guys are in the Mediterranean greenhouse, the lights are on a different timer from the rest of the plants here. So I decrease the photo period as winter sets in. And of course, because I'm in Colorado and we are in my basement down here, it does get fairly cool as well. So at night, the temperature in here might drop down to 50, 55 degrees. So they get both a lighting change as well as a temperature change. And so both of those things will kind of trigger changes in color, changes in growth habit. You'll see them, a lot of these guys go into their winter rosettes.
And Hawken,
And then, of course,
Aaron asks, what is the humidity and temperature in the Mediterranean tent?
I would bet humidity is probably somewhere around 70 to 80% until I open the door, of course. And temperatures during summer, it might reach 90, 95 degrees during the day in here, drop down to like maybe 75 degrees at night. In winter, it probably gets to about 80 degrees during the day, at least up in the top shelves up there. And again, like 55, maybe 60 degrees at night. Stays cooler down on the bottom shelf, which is where I've got some of the South African things I'm working. You can just barely see them in the pot here, but I've got Drosera hilaris seedlings starting up there. And then some of the tuberous sundews are just starting to wake up. I've got the cephalotus, which there's 4 different seed-grown clones in there. I need to separate those out soon. They're coming up on the repot list. So yeah, temperatures actually are a little bit different depending on how high up in the tent we're talking. So up at the top, it gets a lot warmer. Down at the bottom, it stays nice and cool all the time. So I can kind of stratify things that way, grow a lot more variety in the small space that I've got to work with. I think I saw a question come up from somebody.
Yeah, Susan wants to know for the Sarracenia outside, what has been the lowest temperature they have survived?
Yeah, so this is the first year actually that I am going to be trying to leave them outside all year round. So in previous years, I've basically waited until they've experienced their first hard frost outside. So 27, 28 degrees Fahrenheit at night. and then I would bring them inside and put them in the basement for winter. But since the basement is a lot warmer, they always started to wake up like January, February. And then they try and struggle through until I can put them back outside. So this year, I'm hoping they'll survive out there, and they'll probably experience temperatures probably down into the teens at night in that tent, if all goes well. Of course, we'll see how that goes. So.
She's not here, but Jana Lay, she's in Colorado, and she's been growing. I interviewed her for a magazine article, and she's been growing Sarracenia outside in Colorado for 20 years in bogs successfully.
Yeah.
I don't know what her elevation is because I know Colorado is a big state, but
yeah, she's in Fort Collins. She's
Okay.
about a half hour away from me.
There you go.
And she's roughly the same elevation that we are, maybe slightly higher. But yeah, she's got a slightly different technique. I've got so many plants, and I probably won't be staying here forever, so they're still all in pots. She's got the luxury of being able to build the bog gardens, which helps insulate. And what she does is she'll mulch over the tops with a nice thick layer of like bark and other stuff, so that insulates them. I don't have that much mulch material to work with, so I'm hoping that the kind of mini greenhouse effect will help with that. So yeah. So yeah, that's the Mediterranean tent. Close that up a little bit here, and then we'll switch over. The two bigger tents are where I grow all of my favorite plants, the Nepenthes, and of everything else that grows kind of in the same temperature ranges that they like. So switch in here again. This is the Highland tent. So again, I work on kind of a shoestring budget, so everything is set up here on fairly low funding, which kind of goes to show how much you actually can grow, even if you can only afford like shop lights and such. I use an evaporative cooler back there to cool down the greenhouse at night. In summer, I cool down the water that I use to water the plants as well to help keep the temperatures down. But I'll fill up that with very cold ice water and a couple ice packs every night to help really get the temperature down from the air that's blowing out there. So let's see where to start. So down here is where I have a lot of my the most sensitive Highlanders, the things that really need it cold. So we've got Nepenthes Raja there, which is starting to show some mature traits. And behind it, you've got Raja Crosmira that's overshadowing it still. If you guys can't grow Raja, that's a hybrid that I definitely suggest because it seems to be a lot more tolerant of varying conditions. But we've got Trusmatiensis down here. There's Macrophylla, which has surprisingly been the one plant to care the least about the warm summer temperatures here. He's actually done really well here. We've got Lowii and Jacqueline back here. And then in the back corner is my Helianthera corner. So all the marsh pitchers. And they've been doing pretty well. They're quite tolerant of warmer conditions too, as long as the daytime temperatures stay cool. So down here on the floor is where the temperatures never really reach much more than 70, 75 degrees Fahrenheit, even during the heat of the day. So they've been very happy back there. You can see all the flowers coming up. We got Helianthera nibline. There's Minor. There's the Newtan's Giant that a lot of people say is a hybrid. Exapendiculata. And then a lot of other species that are still only producing immature pitchers, but I'm starting to see some real speed build up on those guys as we head into winter here. Also, a couple special little things in some of these pots. Might be hard to see, but this is Drosera murfettii. I got him from, I think it was Mark Anderson. These have actually been growing really well down here. They keep pumping out new leaves. Seems as long as those guys, you keep them cool, they do pretty well. And then I've got a couple trays down here where I also throw any cuttings that I make to get them rooting, and then I put them out into separate little pots here. And those are stuff that I'll have for sale. This is actually a cutting that I've had available for a little while. This is Rub Cantley cross Maxima. They get some really big pictures with a lot of cool colors. And he's actually, or she is producing a flower right now. So I'm kind of debating on keeping that one for a little bit. But
Hawken,
above that, though,
can you go back to the larger Highland Nepenthes you were just showing us and the helianthera and talk a little bit about the types of pots that they're growing in?
yeah, all right. So I kind of use just about anything that I have available. I will use pots, old containers. A lot of the stuff, actually, I was in ceramics in high school for a little while. So I made a whole bunch of pots while I was there, took advantage of it to make my own containers for a while. So a lot of those I actually use the ceramics that I worked with. And a lot of this actually is, they are mostly undrained containers, actually. So I'm very careful about how much I water each of the pots so that I don't flood them over. So in that way, you can use undrained containers with Nepenthes and do pretty well. There are some standard pots with holes down here as well, and those will dry out a lot quicker. So if you have a setup where it's a lot more humid, it's a lot wetter, that's probably better. But if you have a drier environment, it works really well. If you can moderate your watering, you can use undrained containers quite frequently. So ceramics helps keep the temperatures moderated a little more, because it takes a longer for that ceramics to heat up than it does the plastic.
Aaron would like to know if the pots are glazed on the inside.
Most of them, if they have glaze on them, they are glazed on the interior. When you fire pots, the first round, when you harden the clay, is when you get like the terracotta, the porous version. When you go for the glaze firing, though, even if you don't glaze the interior of the pot, it's still going to basically seal the inside of the pot, because it's a slightly higher temperature and it will turn everything in that to glass of some form. So even an unglazed interior will still not really absorb anything. It's just turned into a solid rock, solid piece of glass. So you don't have to worry about like minerals building up within the pot itself. But most of these, because I was making them for decorative purposes as well, the interiors were also glazed just because it looked nicer. So on the other side too, I've got a lot of the South American sundews and bladderworts. So I've got Utricularia and Nelumbifolia in there. And this pot I like because I can basically produce my own little soil plugs on the sides. These are all separate little pots that are attached to the main. And so each of those is a new plug of bladderwort that I'm growing out, and have a lot of those for sale, actually. We've got Drosera latifolia, Gramogalensis, working on getting Magnifica back up to health. He wasn't too happy about the summer heat either. Spiralis has been doing really well. Drosera regia is back in the corner here as well. They haven't really appreciated the summer too much, but the Big Easy clone back there seems to do really well in a lot more higher temperature conditions. And then kind of the pitcher plant nursery right here. I've got a whole bunch of little pots with different crosses. So this is where I put all the Highland seeds and seedlings. Some of the things that I've got going, we've got Rub Cantley cross Maxima cross Jeremiah Harris's Jacqueline. So I'm hoping that'll be a really cool plant when they grow out. Let's see, there's Veitchii cross Velosa seedlings back here. And then Darlingtonia, because they also like it fairly cool. I've got them in a pot back there. They seem to have been hit by something they didn't like this year still. So a couple of the plants died back. We're still trying to dial in the conditions that those guys really need. But then up top is where I've got a lot of the bigger plants and the ones that are more tolerant of slightly warmer conditions because they're sitting above the lights that the plants below are using. So we've got Nepenthes alata, Flames of Apo here. We've got several different Nepenthes maxima clones. This one and let's see, this guy are actually siblings. Incredible diversity in color you can get even from plants that came from the same seed pod. A lot of different hybrids. There's Rub Cantley cross tenuous back here. See if I can pull out one of his nice pictures. It's got just the weirdest shape, and I love these little tubby pictures here. A lot of the Philippines, the really chunky, tubby pictured plants actually seem to do well in fairly warm conditions. So we've got Mantilaginganensis. I'm going to mess that up. Right there. There's Paloanensis that's growing out there. Nepenthes mira. Nepenthes attenboroughii is starting to take off again after the repot. And a couple of the toothy plants also seem to do well in moderate temperatures. We got Edwardsiana. I do have Hamada, who's bouncing back from the repot. And of course, Hamada hybrids also do really well in slightly warmer conditions. Ventricosa cross Hamada here is probably one that I would recommend heavily above a lot of the others. It just seems to really do well no matter where you put it. And then same goes for on this side. We've got a lot more of the tolerant hybrids and kind of intermediate to Highland species. We've got Rub Cantley, Vogelii is over here. We got Nepenthes burkii is doing well. A couple of truncata forms and truncata hybrids. I've actually got some of these plants have gotten really big already. So this is truncata cross Mikei that's growing up here. And we haven't gotten a flower from him, but the vine's probably like 8 feet long at this point. And I've actually got a few plants that are in preparing to bloom right now. So this is one of the Helen Cross Spectabilis clones. Spectabilis hybrids also always do really well in various conditions. Some new seed pods on Maxima cross Talangensis is coming up right there. And Burbage cross Platykyla. There's a couple other Platykyla hybrids. So quite a bit packed into a small space here. But that's the Highland tent overview right there.
To go back to the Highland seeds or your pots of the seedlings, can you talk about where you're sourcing some of these from?
Yeah, so I mean, all of these are horticultural hybrids down here for the most part. The one exception is I did get a chance to produce with someone else some horticultural Nepenthes aristolachioides seeds, and I've got so far 2 tiny little seedlings there. So these are all things that I have either made crosses myself and produced the seeds, or I've sent pollen off to somebody else or received pollen and so on. Everything has come from in cultivation. There was a time many, many years ago when I was very, very naive, when some of the plants that I got did originate from seeds I got from online overseas before I knew that that was a no-no. So, but that it was many years ago, and I have not dealt with that sort of thing for well over a decade. Everything here is entirely horticultural, and that's what I will push for everyone else as well. Because if you get horticultural seeds and you can see the pictures of the parents too, you know where the source is coming from, and you can verify if the person you're getting it from is a reliable grower. Most of the people who have flowering Highland species and stuff are going to be fairly well established in the community.
If you're sending pollen or receiving pollen, and I'm looking at all these pots of the seedlings, does that mean the other grower has half of the seeds and seedlings, or do you sometimes get all of them, or are you waiting on seedlings from people?
Yeah, so like the general thing that we do when we trade pollen is it's a 50-50 split for seeds. So whoever sends the pollen, if seeds are produced, they will get approximately 50% of the seeds back. And then I will keep the other half, or vice versa, and then grow out the seedlings. There is a handful of cases sometimes where a cross is attempted and it produces like 3, 4 seeds altogether. In which case, sometimes on my end, perhaps I will let the person know, and I will try and grow out the seedlings. And if there's actually more than 1 or 2 seedlings that actually result, then once they're established a little bit better, I might send them off to the person, or grow out a plant and try and take a cutting once it's big enough. But otherwise, yeah, it's a 50-50 split is the usual practice.
Are these non-carnivorous ferns special, or are they considered weeds?
I kind of keep some of them off because sometimes people do like just growing ferns on their own, so I will sell some of those. But otherwise, all of the ferns that I have basically have resulted as random weeds that have popped up in the moss. And I've got quite a few species that have popped up too. There's occasionally been maidenhairs. Most of them I have no idea what the names are, of course. That's well out of my league. I cannot identify ferns for anything. But yeah, sometimes as I'm just walking through the greenhouses looking around, I will find new ferns that are just kind of popping up. Like we can see over here in the Burbage across Rub Cantley I pot. He's got a few little ferns that are just kind of showing up in the moss, and they'll do that all over the place. You might also notice if we look closely here, this little guy here is not a fern. That is actually a Cynorchus orchid. So I got one of those and I let it flower, and the seed pod opened before I could get to it. And now I have orchids just kind of showing up all over my greenhouses, because that's one species that doesn't need any special conditions to germinate.
Do you have a pesticide schedule, or do you do it as needed?
Mostly as needed. Since I have plants that are kind of coming inside from outside all the time, or vice versa, occasionally the wild thrips and scale will show up here. And when I find those, I bomb the plants with neem oil or spinosad or whatever it might be that's recommended for that particular species. If one thing doesn't seem to be working, then I'll switch to a different insecticide for a couple of weeks to try and avoid resistance and knock them down with something else. For the most part, though, it seems like there's only ever like 1 or 2 plants that really seems to attract the pests. It's not across the board. So like my Nepenthes glabrata, for some reason, the scale absolutely loves that particular plant. And so it's still an ongoing battle to just get rid of them from that guy. But every other plant around them, around that one, not a single scale to be found. They don't care about anything others, just the glabrata. Excuse me while I trip over my tongue.
I have the same problem with a red leaf Rafflesiana. They'll be covered in scale and everything around them is fine.
Yeah, it's always just the one plant that for some reason they target it. Yeah, so that's the Highland tent. We can switch here real quick as I move over. The last tent that I've got that I grow things in is the largest. And thanks to that, it also kind of has the most variable growing conditions in it. So on the bottom shelves is kind of an intermediate environment. It stays fairly cool during summer, gets kind of cold in winter. And then up at the top, you get the true ultra lowland environment. So this is the main warm greenhouse. So again, on the bottom is a lot of stuff that likes it a little cooler, but then up at the top is where I've got all the true tropicals. So if we start up here, we've got nice lowlanders. We got a big Veitchii. That picture's starting to go off, but he's got a new one that's growing up back here. This is a seed-grown Batulawi form. I've got Nepenthes benstonii growing out here. The famous Rafflesiana cross Hemsleyana Brunei giant red. Most of his lower pictures have died off now, but he's starting to transition to uppers again. I might have, let's see, see if I can pull it out here at all. He's got a basil that's produced a couple of decent sized pitchers, so that's one of them. They can get quite a bit bigger than that, though.
What's the
He's
name of
due
the
for a
cross
repot.
again?
It's Nepenthes rafflesiana cross Hemsleyiana. It was sold as pure rafflesiana for a while, but it's got a lot of physical traits that definitely hail from the related Hemsleyiana. It's got that distinct hip. The pitchers are really skinny and narrow above the hip. The upper pitchers kind of retain the boxy look that Hemsleyiana is famous for. And that's probably where it gets the giant from, because it's got a bit of heterosis going on. The main vine doesn't have any good pitchers on it right now, but this is the big seed-grown Nepenthes sumatrana that I showed flowering on social media recently, and we've done a few crosses. A few of them appear that they may have actually taken, so might have some really cool hybrids from that coming up. All of the pictures from the basils are kind of hidden away in the back here, but that's one of the new pictures from the basils on that plant. It's got some really nice candy stripes the species is famous for. Some of the other major lowland species are up here on the same shelf, the high shelves. We got Nepenthes mirabilis econostoma that's starting to grow out here. Morelliana's in the back. We've got Nepenthes madagascariensis that's growing up here. And then all sorts of similar species and hybrids. A lot of my ampullarias are on this shelf over here. This is one of my seed-grown green forms. And actually, this guy, when I grew him out, some of his siblings, it was either him or it was the red speckled form here, but I had the pure ampullaria show up, but then all of the siblings ended up being Nepenthes hookeriana plants. So there was rafflesiana pollination that happened with that. But then we've got over here on this shelf is my Indo-Chinese shelf. So I've got all the species from like Thailand and Vietnam and such. So we got Sarracensis is growing up here. There's Nepenthes Chang, it's hanging down here, Concondana, and several others that are growing out. There's also a Pervilli that's growing in the back corner over here. So all these guys that really do not like it cold, they love it when it's hot and humid. And then right under them, similarly, because they like it hot and humid, most of the Pediolaris sundews are on this next shelf down back there. There's a handful that are flowering. See if I can squeeze through here. There we go. So there's one of the Pediolaris flowers that are opening up right there. All the species back there. So yeah, I kind of stratified this greenhouse by what likes it really hot. It gets to go on the higher shelves. So Drosera serpens in here likes it really warm, so he gets to go on a high shelf. A lot of the tropical, like spatulata sundews and their hybrids I've got up there. Working on some more seedlings over here. I've also got some utricularias that like it hot, so there's Chrysantha that's blooming in there. And then as we go down on the shelf, we've got a few more like intermediate Nepenthes that are growing over there, a lot of different hybrids. And then down here is stuff that likes a little bit cooler. So I've got Drosera ultramafica here. Most of my Drosera linearis are currently in the fridge dormant, but there's a handful of seedlings that are in that pot right now. They really like it cool. They do not like it when it gets warm. Same with, I've got my pot of Pinguicula nahuelbutensis from South America. They really like it cool. If it gets hot, they just kind of collapse, so they get to stay on the bottom shelf. But I've also got a handful of the propagating trays down here as well, because the cooler kind of stable conditions really works for that. And on the other side is also the Sarracenia Propagation Center. So all the seeds and seedlings that I have produced end up down on these shelves until they're big enough to go outside.
What's your lighting schedule for them?
Everything in the Highland and the Lowland tents here is kind of on the similar schedule. That's got about 16 hours day, 8 hours night. And that's just the same all year round. As if there's stuff in this greenhouse that goes dormant, I just pull it out and put it in the fridge until that dormancy period is over. And let's see, there's another question here that I just saw pop up.
Yes. Susan asks, when you have had a Sarracenia rhizome go dormant, what have been some of your techniques to encourage it to grow?
When it goes dormant, I just leave it dormant until springtime comes. I don't try and push it to grow. Around here, everything is trying to wake up sooner than I want it to, so I don't really have an issue with trying to get things to wake up. I have the reverse issue usually. Um, so, but if a Sarracenia goes dormant, it's going to stay in that obligate dormancy period for at least like 6 to 8 weeks. So it needs to stay cool until that point. And if you want to grow one indoors and get it to wake up early, then you can generally just like bring it out of that cold area, put it in a nice, warm, sunny location, and it'll start growing on its own. There's really
Aaron,
not a whole lot of trick necessarily to it.
Aaron asks, it seems like nothing is sitting in water. What is the watering schedule?
So yeah, a lot of these things, they are in water or at least in a small tray of some sort. There's a few where I don't have a tray yet, and that's just because I haven't put one under the air. I'm watering everything by hand every other day. So things that really need it will get it on those days. Things that are still wet, I just kind of gloss over. So it's an every other day schedule that I'm in here. But a lot of these things, they do have little trays under them. Each pot has its own individual thing, or with the case of the big trays back here, it's one big tray that's under all of those guys. But yeah, everything is just, I go through here by hand because again, shoestring budget, I don't have anything to set up like an automated system. And since I have so many different kinds of plants, I just kind of want to make sure that I get everything, the water that it needs and not overwater one thing, underwater something else. Everything gets its own individual attention. So it's a lot of work, but it results in me being able to, again, grow a lot of variety in a relatively small space. Just the kind of attention to detail and keeping to that schedule. There's a lot of stuff in here too that's non-carnivorous. You might notice this guy is a ponderosa lemon tree actually, and he's got a couple of flower buds that are developing right there. So everything that is non-carnivorous and tropical also gets to go into this greenhouse. And that's kind of what you see in the back third back there. Everything back there is tropical fruit trees. I've got a couple of anthuriums, the amorphophilus, the corpse flowers are all back there. A couple tropical gingers and such. So that gets to take up the back third of the greenhouse.
Hawken, Manny Herrera would like to go back to the Rafflesiana Hemsliana. He would like to know where you got it from.
If anyone remembers CP Jungle way back when, run by Michael Catalani, it was a store. I got a couple of my big plants originally from there. So the Rafflesiana cross Hemsliana, my Ampullaria harlequin came from there. A couple other small things. But yeah, it was years and years ago that I did that. Let's see.
Because he made his own cross of those two things.
Yeah, so this is the BE88 clone. So it comes from Borneo Exotics. So yeah, this was one that Borneo Exotics was distributing way back when. I know there's a couple of people who've also been looking for the 99 clone, which I would like to find as well, but it seems to have kind of vanished. I've been able to distribute a couple of cuttings from this guy out, but yeah, this is one that I've had for well over a decade now. And I've just had to cut back several times and regrow out.
Do you have Nepenthes Kashiana?
Yeah, Kaziana was actually in the Highland tent. It seems to do better as a Highlander for me, or at least a cool intermediate. It doesn't like the lowland conditions that I have, so he stays over there. I've also got, he needs to get repotted because he's in a tiny pot right now. I've got Nepenthes bicalcarata that's growing out right here. He's going to get moved over to the other side of the greenhouse here because actually the two different sides here are a little stratified as well, because this is the side that's closer to the middle of the room. It's a little warm. are a little warmer, and then over here it's right next to the outside of the house, so this side actually gets a little cooler at night. So I've got all these different little microclimates I can put things in.
Hawken, Lexi
Hmm.
says, isn't the Malaysiana tropicals Rafflesiana also potentially a Raff Hemsliana hybrid?
Uh, I don't know. I don't have that clone. Um, if I had a photo, I could probably guess, but I wouldn't say for sure. I don't have much experience with a lot of Malaysiana plants, admittedly. Uh, most of the rafts that I do have, I've got that hybrid, but then I've got a lot that are seed grown back here. So let's see, they're all hanging out in a couple different places. So all of these guys are actually seed grown pure Rafflesianas. Or this one actually might have some Ampullaria influence in its background, but it's got like the winged Rafflesiana very clearly in it, at least. So
All right. Sorry, what were you saying that is? You think that's a pure
these are pure as far as I know. Nepenthes Rafflesiana, they were grown from seed. I've got a couple of their siblings are also back here. They're a little smaller still.
because I think I have that too, and I love that wing.
And it's like all these guys came from the same seed pod, and most of them have popped out that winged tendril trait in some form. It's not the same as like the wavy trait that comes from the bottom of the picture and runs up. This one runs from the other side, from the leaf tip down. And so it keeps kind of that straight look more so.
What
And funny
is
enough,
what is Rafflesiana variety alata?
um, it's an unofficial name. So it's just one of those winged tendril plants. Usually it's going to reference the ones that have the roughly wings that are coming up from the bottom, but alata means wings, so it could potentially
Okay.
refer to either version. I don't think it's one that was actually published, so it's not an official variety. Same with like Rafflesiana nivea, the white plants. But a lot of people use it because it's a recognizable name. Funny enough, some of the Hookarianas that I have, you could call this Hookariana var alata because it's got the winged tendril as well. So my plants actually grew out with that. And let's see, there was another question I think I saw pop up.
There's lots of stuff going on, Hawken, in the
Oh
chat.
dear.
Alexi shared I'm assuming the Malaysiana Tropicals RAF photo. And
Okay,
then I shared it later. Yeah.
let's see if I can pop up the photo here.
Like
I might look.
It's like a tricolor, very dark. Nice dark plant.
Oh yeah.
With some purple leaves. It doesn't seem
Yeah,
as
at a glance that looks pretty pure Flesiana, but of course, I imagine that's one thing like you'd have to maybe test genetics just to be absolutely sure, since they can be so similar and introgress, of course.
Yep.
And then let's see here. There's a couple of new projects that I've been working on as well. Where did I put them? Again, all the seedlings that I've got are working on back there. I did produce some Pediolaris sundew seeds for a little while back, and I've tried to drop those in back there where it's warm. I don't seem to have great luck with germinating Pediolaris seeds though, so I'm not sure entirely what the trick with those guys is, but the plants at least seem to do well as long as it's nice and warm. Over on this shelf, actually, I've got a couple of the other cool rare stuff. So I'm trying my hand at Nepenthes campanulata for the first time right there. I've got Clippiatas back here. There's Velardii is also growing in that corner. My Ericoides did not like it when the temperatures got warm during summer again, but he's starting to get happier now that it's cooling down again. That's a funky little species for what it likes. For me, it seems to be a very narrow window. It likes it cool, kind of intermediate for the most part, but will tolerate warm every now and then. Let's see. I think overall that's kind of the gist of the growing environment that I've got. But you guys have any questions still about some of the stuff that I have, or if you want to know anything about the non-carnivores in the back, I can talk about those too.
Yeah, so if anybody has questions, type them in. Kevin would like you to post a picture of your Attenborough on social media or send him a message because he missed it when you were in the Highland chamber.
Oh, I can walk back there again real quick too.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the Nepenthes Attenborough. He's starting to produce pictures again now that he's settled from repotting and it's cooling down. So, and he's actually also in my Nepenthes Attenborough ceramic pitcher. So I designed it after the plant.
Okay, Hawken. Rob says, Hawken, I bought some Drosera paradoxa, brumanensis, and lantana seeds from you fairly recently, and they have all germinated.
They did?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
And then Kevin says that your Attenborough is incredible.
Yeah, he's still young. You know, I'm hoping it'll kind of explode out once it gets really cool again, because he does like the cooler winter over here. But it's been doing pretty well here. Although I have to say, to my surprise, it's actually kind of getting overshone by the Mantelingagenensis back here, who is much larger at the moment.
Kevin
Very
adds,
similar plants.
Kevin adds, do you have any Nepenthes velvet?
No. So, trying to remember what that cross was. Is it this like the same thing as the common gentle clone? I think it's got the Maxima cross Fusca.
Not sure, but we'll wait for him to respond. And he says, what species, in your opinion, are the hardest to grow for Nepenthes?
Oh god. Nepenthes villosa is one. I have failed with that one. And it was doing well before, and it's just decided to collapse recently. Overall habits, let's see. Who do I really have trouble with? Are like fairly easy. They'll have fairly similar requirements usually. The Highlanders, you put them all together and they usually grow pretty well in similar conditions. But yeah, Velosa is one that definitely sticks out for me. He gives me trouble. Glabrata gives me trouble every summer. And I think I'm seeing people commenting, yeah, the Maxima Fusca is the velvet parentage. I think it's the same plant basically as the common Nepenthes gentle.
Yep.
I have what looks like a mixta version of that plant. So it looks like it was mixed across Fusca, but it's been traded as Nepenthes gentle. But it's not the same plant. So I don't grow the velvet clone. Also, someone was asking earlier, here's Nepenthes casiana. It's growing out for me.
Yeah, I was asking about that. I have a mother plant that's maybe 8 feet long, but I just chopped off the 2 feet of it to take cuttings.
Yeah. So this guy, he grows a little bit slow for me, but he always does well in more the Highland conditions. So he's got that main vine going up, and the pot is actually down in here, and he's got a basil that's starting to expand out as well and produce the lower pitchers.
So for mine specifically, do you call, you know how so what is a basil for you? For that plant, for that species, I have babies coming off the stem, but it's like 5 inches above the substrate. And then most of my other plants, the basils come from underneath the substrate.
Yeah, so basil rosette, I would say, is anything that grows like below the first couple 2 inches of stem. So if it's like right at or above soil level, it can be called a basil, or anything that's growing from underneath. If it's growing from higher up than that, I would usually call that an aerial rosette.
It's definitely not an
So
aerial rosette. It's just, yeah, a couple inches above the substrate. I have a couple offshoots.
yeah, so I've got a handful of plants that will do that. Let's see, do I have any examples over here? Like I've got plenty of examples, like the platychila rub cantley. They're growing basils from under the soil,
Hmm.
but um, I do get plants occasionally. Like over here, I've got Nepenthes truncata cross aristolachioides, and there's the soil level down there, but then the basils
Yeah,
are growing from just above the soil. I would still call these basils since they're so low on the stem. But yeah, if it starts growing anything like up in here or up on the main vine, I would start to call those aerial rosettes
like a
personally.
ampullaria.
Yeah, or gracillus, they do that a lot too.
So Hawken, when right around when your internet went out, I was going to ask you, you have a lot of really rare species, some rare hybrids too. When you're looking for the next plant, how do you decide what you want to add to your collection?
Oh, there's a lot that goes into it. So I am controlled by the autistic urge to grab the next shiny thing half the time. So sometimes it's just whichever plant just makes me go, "Oh my god, I need it." But otherwise, there are some species like I like to try and find a lot of pure species because I want to use them for educational purposes, talk about them in my videos at some point. So I've got a list of things that like really look different from other species, or they're going to provide a particular lesson that I want to talk about. Like in the other greenhouse, I've got like 11 or 12 of the Indo-Chinese Nepenthes species. At a first glance, you're never going to tell them apart because all the pictures they're tubby, they're red, and that's about it. But I can talk about them because they're similar, but how we tell the difference is all these little tiny details and looking at how they radiated out in throughout their range. So kind of depends on what lesson I'm trying to teach, or if the species is like really unique and I want to be able to show that off, or again, just autistic shiny.
Hawken, Manny Herrera says that he misses CP Jungle.
So do I, because they had so many things that I was wanting to get, and then they went offline, and I was so sad
All
because
right,
there
well,
was some really cool stuff they had listed.
I was going to look it up, but Hawken, you probably remember. I wanted to thank Hawken for participating in this year's World Carnivorous Plant Day. If you go to the International Carnivorous Plant Society's YouTube page, you'll see that the first Wednesday of May every year is World Carnivorous Plant Day. And this year I published I think I published 26 videos, one for every hour, to celebrate carnivorous plants. And I asked Hawken to do a video on how to identify plants basically, and some like commonly misnamed plants and the importance of taxonomy. So thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Hawken. That was a really great video because a lot of people kind of fumble on that topic.
Yeah, and it's something that's we are all always constantly learning. There's groups of plants that I have no clue how to identify between still. So uh, others that I'm a lot better versed with. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses in that topic too.
And thank you everyone for attending this live. Next Thursday, Jeremiah Harris is going to be giving a tour. But if anybody wants to participate in World Carnivorous Plant Day, which is the first Wednesday of May, which is going to be May 1st this year, May 1st for 2024, send me a message at education@carnivorousplants.org or Kenny@carnivorousplants.org, because even though it's May, you might need to start filming things now to get ready for that event. because you need to submit it around April 10th, so I have time to edit them and publish them. All right, Hawken, any final words?
Just if you like to see the plants that I have, or if you're interested in some of the other things I do, like the reptiles and such, you can always find me on social media at Carlton Carnivores. It's the same tag on every platform, and all of the links for what I do and where I am, you can find it on the Facebook page, on the website carltoncarnivores.com. I have a link tree, so there's one big page with all the links there too. You can find that on the business page. So thanks everyone for tuning in.
It's not a surprise that gardeners, educators, and scientists are fascinated by these unique plants. The International Carnivorous Plant Society, or ICPS, not only love these plants, but welcomes growers just getting started all the way through professional scientists. The ICPS even started an annual World Carnivorous Plant Day to celebrate them. The free online event is held the first Wednesday of May. Take a look around our website and you'll find historic documents about carnivorous plants, growing guides, free educational resources, and more. Have questions? Ask. We don't bite, but our plants do.